Tonight on CFTK-TV News, an event was held in Kitimat discussing fire safety. A report looks at how BC's fire season is going so far, and we hear from a Saanich police officer who suffered gunshot wounds a couple of years ago.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cal Maslin, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond for the day. According to recent reports, city officials for Terrace are of the belief that a location not far south of the Northwest Regional Airport, known as the Skeena Industrial Development Park, would be a good place for the creation of low-emission fuel. Creating the fuel, which results from the splitting of hydrogen from water, is getting support from the provincial government as they've given out a $150,000 grant to the Northern BC Hydrogen Hub. The hub has been described as a collection of local governments spanning between Prince George and Prince Rupert, which would include Terrace as well, and Terrace has even been described as having the potential to be the main base for this kind of hydrogen production because of just how much potential the Industrial Development Park has. In order to keep an eye on, as well as maintain their various power lines, BC Hydro has begun to bring out some high tech and is utilizing it via a helicopter. The chopper in question has been provided to BC Hydro courtesy of Talent Helicopters, and it has had what is called a LIDAR system attached to it as part of BC Hydro's work. LIDAR is short for light detection and ranging, and its purpose is to use lasers that determine the exact distance between the ground and wherever its start point is. The Talent helicopter is set to cover 14 BC regional districts, one of which will be the Bulkley-Nechako Regional District, a district that includes several communities such as Smithers, Burns Lake, Houston, as well as Telqua. With the fire season being in full swing at the moment, the residents of Kitimat had the chance to learn more about how to best get ready if they ever have to deal with a fire near them.
Yesterday saw an event held in Kitimat where a private company known as FireSmart spoke on how to be proactive when it comes to protecting both communities and infrastructure from fires by preparing for it ahead of time, since it is that time of the year when wildfires become a massive threat, as illustrated by Skeena MLA Ellis Ross via his own experiences.
This actually came about when I was actually touring the interior of BC. I was actually asked to go look at what was happening in Monty Lake and Logan Lake, specifically private citizens fighting fires, using their own hoses, their water tanks, their water pumps, their pickaxes, their axes, and doing it all on their own. And so I realized back then we need a better plan in BC.
But not just any kind of plan. Ross has said that a regional plan is what's needed to best prepare for the wildfire season, and this event in Kitimat was a good start to the conversation as the turnout for it was pretty good. And naturally, Kitimat's fire chief, Trent Bossins, also attended the event and relayed his takeaways from how the event went.
First and foremost is just the education piece, is just having people in the room that are really wanting to understand better what the, what the wildfire season is looking like, what impacts that wildfire season could have on a community, but also bringing awareness that Kitimat's not immune. Kitimat is not, it's a coastal town. We were defined under, the rainforest piece, but we truly are at risk, just like any other community is in British Columbia at any time or at any given summer or year. So I think having that message put out, having that message understood that, we typically are a coastal town, we typically are a bit wetter than, I'm going to say down in the interior, but we still have a risk. And we have a risk that needs to be looked at seriously. And not only that, but that risk is gaining momentum every year based off of just what climate we're having now with the longer summers, the hotter summers, and of course that makes the wildfire season longer as well.
Bossins also described that getting this fire safety information out to the public is vital to building a response program to be prepared for fires that especially hit close to home, although it's not known when FireSmart will do one of these presentations again or where. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cal Maslin.
Forecasters are expecting a busy wildfire season, but so far it's not as severe as last year. Even so, the low snowpack, stubborn droughts, and a warmer than expected summer in many parts of the province are expected to trigger large and challenging fires. CTV's St. John Alexander has the details.
Already, there are more than 100 fires burning in the province, And holdover fires, those smoldering all winter underground, have begun to intensify, and some 300,000 hectares have already burned.
If we compare to where we were at last year in 2023, we were already approaching the 1 million hectare mark.
So the good news, compared to last season anyway, we are off to a slower start, and fewer fires have been caused by humans. But the deep snowpack we'd hoped for isn't there, and already letters are going out urging people in drought-ravaged areas to start saving water.
So this is really the first step of trying to see if we can all come together to better support that watershed in the times of drought and to supply some flows back into the streams.
Spring has brought some rain, but all it takes, warns forecasters, is a strong ridge of high pressure to move in and park itself over the province.
These persistent dry, warm conditions can really elevate the fire hazard and change the way our fuels respond and behave. But as we get into the core of the fire season, namely July and August, that underlying drought really is going to play a huge driver in bringing us intense fires.
And so the government is urging everyone not to forget what we've learned over the past few summers. Get ready now. Evacuation plans, emergency kits.
When wildfires are reported near communities, it becomes increasingly difficult to obtain tenant and home insurance. So that's why it's important that people secure insurance now.
The province admits it's hard to forecast how much rain will fall, but it likely won't be enough to relieve our persistent drought conditions. Conditions they believe will lead to large and intense fires. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
Coming up next is another update on the trial over the death of a teenage boy. Welcome back. For the first time, we're hearing from one of the Saanich police officers shot outside of a Bank of Montreal branch nearly 2 years ago. The constable was inside an emergency response team that was peppered with gunfire from twin brothers who staged a robbery to lure in police and kill them. CTV's Shannon Patterson has his harrowing story of survival and recovery.
Getting back in uniform was a big motivator for Saanich Police Constable Stephen Reichert.
I spent the majority of 10 months in a wheelchair. For now, I'm now just focused on getting back to what I can be and what my new normal is.
Reichert was shot in both legs and took another bullet to the arm 2 years ago during what was initially thought to be an armed robbery at this Bank of Montreal branch.
The information that we had was that the two suspects were inside. We had a number of civilians. So around that time of our arrival, the call was classified as a hostage taking.
Reichert and 6 other officers inside an emergency response team van arrived on scene just seconds before the 2 armed suspects exited the bank.
One of the suspects to the rear immediately turns towards us, and as he turns, he raises up his rifle. Suddenly, I felt a heavy impact to my left leg. That caused me to look down to my leg, and it was in that exact moment that I received another very heavy blow to my right leg.
He realized he'd been shot, and so had 5 of his fellow officers inside the van.
I'm now laying on my back in, a pool of blood, and to my left is one of my colleagues. I can tell that he's been critically injured. He's not able to communicate with me. We're staring face to face with each other, and immediately I knew that we were under fire.
Hearing the patrol supervisor say over the air that shots were fired and there were officers down. At that point in time froze for me for a few seconds.
As Reichert pulled out his tourniquet to try to stop the bleeding, the only ERT member who hadn't been shot exited the van.
He was engaging with the suspects, and that was a very huge moment for me, just feeling that he was taking a huge risk at essentially putting himself into a position to be able to provide myself cover and protection.
The suspects, twin brothers Matthew and Isaac Ochterlony, were shot and killed by police. It was later determined the robbery was just a ruse.
This bank robbery had a bigger motive to it, and that was to kill police officers, plain and simple.
The 6 officers who were hit by gunfire all survived, but Reichert's legs were torn apart by the bullets.
The round essentially vaporized about a 4-inch piece of my tibia bone.
Recovery has been long and difficult, but the constable has returned to work part-time.
At this point, that's working 2 days a week, putting the uniform back on, which is honestly just another huge step in that recovery. It's another huge milestone for me.
Despite his injuries and the trauma he suffered that day,
I call this incident a success because we were able to achieve our ultimate goal, which was securing the hostages and protecting the innocent people.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News.
As a murder trial continues into the death of an innocent teenage boy killed in the crossfire of a gang hit, some of the evidence that the jury is considering is publicly available. It's from the dash cam of the car Alfred Wong was with his parents in when he was killed by a stray bullet. CTV's Ben Nesbitt has the details, which some viewers may find disturbing.
Riding in the back seat of his family's car, Alfred Wong and his parents left their weekly visit with his older brother in January of 2018. The vehicle's dash cam captured their journey along East Broadway. His mother testified they were having a casual conversation about their next family dinner. But moments after they passed through the intersection of Cambie Street, disaster struck. Jurors heard the entirety of the disturbing video, including Wong's screams of pain, as his mother pulled the car over. I turned to look at him. He was in pain, and you could tell from his eyes. And he collapsed, she said. Wong later died in hospital. Kane Carter is charged with the second-degree murders of both Wong and Kevin Whiteside. Police believe Whiteside opened fire that night, intending to kill a rival gang member who was dining at Indochine restaurant. 2 witnesses who were inside the restaurant that night testified Wednesday about hearing the gunfire. Crown has acknowledged the majority of its case is based off of circumstantial evidence, much of it being video footage. The trial will continue on Thursday. Ben Nesbitt, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the north coast is said to be getting partly cloudy conditions at a low at 7 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area will also deal with partly cloudy conditions at a low at 7 degrees too. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District is also said to be partly cloudy as well, but with their low at 0 degrees. On the north coast, their next week or so will be made up of mostly cloudy days as well as some sun and some rain, while the high bounces from 13 to 15 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them will see some rain at the start, then mostly a mix of sun and cloud afterwards, while the high shifts from 13 to 24 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the upcoming week will also see some rain early before getting a bit more of the sun and some clouds too, with the high moving between 10 and 23 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is utility work, bridge maintenance, construction work, road maintenance work, paving operations, and several special events. Highway 37 has some paving operations, bridge maintenance, roadside brushing, and frost heaves, some road maintenance work and bridge maintenance on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has frost heaves. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, tension over housing and immigration led to a war of words between David Eby and Ottawa. Welcome back. Amid the ongoing housing crisis, a growing number of British Columbians see the impacts of immigration in a negative light, a trend that sparked a war of words between BC's Premier and Ottawa. CTV's Rob Buffum reports.
With the high cost of living and ongoing housing crisis, it should be no surprise that welcoming even more residents is not popular.
This is not something that we saw a year ago or 2 years ago, it's been slowly bubbling.
A Research Coast survey found 44% now think immigration is having a mostly negative effect on the country, up 6% from last year. That's now 2 points higher than those who view immigration positively. Nearly half of respondents across Canada think legal immigration should drop, a figure that's even higher in BC.
Essentially tying it to the housing crisis. If we can't really have homes for everybody who's already here, how are we going to deal with an added influx of immigrants?
The impact of newcomers has sparked a war of words between BC's Premier and Ottawa. This week, David Eby lashing out at the feds for a lack of financial support after Quebec got $750 million to help with the cost of asylum seekers.
Frankly, is the straw that broke this camel's back. The money being showered down on Quebec and Ontario, and us scrabbling around for what's left over.
The immigration minister responded, calling Eby confused on the issue, noting Quebec receives 2/3 of all asylum seekers, while BC takes in less than 2%.
Well, he's entitled to his opinion. I think the facts about asylum seekers in BC as a proportion of what Ontario and Quebec are taking in speak for themselves. It is much lower in BC.
Eby has doubled down, pointing out BC gets 10,000 new residents every 37 days, counting legal immigrants and otherwise. Adding in a statement, no matter how you look at it, in exact dollars per capita or as a ratio of our GDP, Western provinces get less from the federal government. All I ask is that British Columbians get their fair share from Ottawa to support our rapidly growing population so that everyone can build a good life here. A sentiment polling suggests many people would agree with. Robert Buff from CTV News, Victoria.
A motorcyclist is dead after a horrific crash north of the George Massey Tunnel. Mounties believe that a semi-driver may not even realize that they played a role in the rider's death. CTV's Yasmin Gandam has the details and a warning that they are disturbing.
The typical morning rush turned deadly on Highway 99. Mounties say just after 6 a.m., a motorcyclist collided with a vehicle and slid off their bike onto the road.
A passing semi-truck and the rear wheels on the trailer of the semi-truck had run over the motorcyclist. And unfortunately, the motorcyclist has passed away.
Now the search is on for the driver of the semi, who did not remain on scene and, according to Highway Patrol, may not even realize they were involved.
Typically with the very large vehicles with trailers, they're very long vehicles. They have a lot of wheels and tires, and what happened would have happened so fast.
It's another reminder of how dangerous the road can be for motorcycle riders.
Anticipate, anticipate, anticipate. So that's the mantra.
Gurpreet then teaches road safety and points out motorcyclists need to be vigilant at all times.
As more and more traffic is building, people are losing patience. So drivers are in a hurry, motorcyclists are in a hurry. But at the end of the day, it's always the motorcyclist that loses.
The right gear and high visibility clothing can be lifesavers. He's encouraging riders who are getting back on their bikes for the summer to take a refresher course, even if they're experienced.
Skill levels have to be really high in order to compensate for some of these complexities that are originating in traffic.
BC Highway Patrol says they're already hearing from witnesses in the area, but that the details are inconsistent. That's why they're very interested in any dash cam footage from drivers in the area, particularly that semi-driver, to figure out what exactly led to this tragedy. Yasmin Gandam, CTV News, Surrey.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 24.10 of a cent. The price of gold is down $36.80. Oil is up 12 cents. Natural gas is down 9 cents. Aluminum is up $42. In Toronto, the TSX is down 263.44 points. The Venture Index is down 8.05. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 65.11, and Nasdaq is up 59.12. Still ahead, a shipwreck from the 1960s has recently been discovered. Welcome back. Now to a story making headlines here and across the pond, the discovery of the last ship belonging to famed Irish explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton. It sank in 1962, and it has just been found off of the coast of Labrador. CTV's Garrett Berry dives into this story for us.
Lots of excitement about today's announcement, especially among members of the research team, who says with this discovery, they're ready to bring the story of Ernest Shackleton back to life for a new generation.
6 decades have passed since the quest slipped out of sight and under the Labrador Sea. This week, new pictures using sonar technology reveal its exact location on the ocean floor. The boat, still remarkably intact and just 400 meters underwater, was tracked down by a team of shipwreck hunters on Sunday.
Everyone on our team who was present, it's a sense of euphoria. You work so hard. It's been, as Paul alluded to, many years that we've been planning and hoping to do this.
More than 100 years ago, Ernest Shackleton boarded the vessel, one of the great polar explorers, for a swan song expedition to Antarctica. He died on board, a heart attack that took him before his vessel reached its destination. It marked the end of an era.
But the whole idea of uncovering this history is to be able to tell it again to a new generation. His Shackleton's experience in Antarctica is timeless. We'll be talking about it for another 100 years.
The quest got to Labrador decades later, part of a second life as a sealing vessel for its Norwegian owners. It sank in 1962, all crew abandoned ship after it got struck and damaged by thick sea ice. The search team was led by the Royal Canadian Geographic Society. They kept in contact with some of Shackleton's descendants, and on board, Torrey Top, whose father-in-law owned the quest.
It's incredible. I couldn't believe that that would be possible. One of the dreams was once to be able to locate where Quest was being.
The next step will be to head back to the wreck site with some underwater cameras to get an even better picture of this vessel. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
The chief of Elk Valley and South Country Rural Fire and Rescue said a teen is lucky he wasn't seriously hurt after he and his dog fell about 200 meters down an embankment near Elko, BC. Michael Hockley said the dog slipped on Monday around 10 p.m. and the boy lost his footing trying to save it. The rescue took until about 4 a.m. Tuesday morning and involved 12 firefighters and 7 search and rescue members along with the RCMP and medics. A statement from the Regional District of East Kootenay stated that the teen sustained non-life-threatening injuries, and Hockley confirmed that the dog was shaken up but uninjured. The University of Victoria said one of their researchers is the leader of a team of international experts developing a syphilis vaccine, calling it an ancient disease that's becoming increasingly prevalent again. A university statement stated that the project involves engineering a hybrid protein with the goal of preventing infections and congenital syphilis. University of Victoria microbiologist Carolyn Cameron leads the research being funded by the National Institutes of Health in the U.S. The school said syphilis is treatable via penicillin, but stigma often prevents people from seeking treatment, and cases are rising, so a vaccine is widely viewed as the best way to combat it. That is all of our news for now. From all of us here at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.